Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the mystery. A haunted mansion. I have told this story a few times throughout my life, and I've got a kind of mix of responses from everybody. Um, anyway, this experience started back in high school, and I didn't actually drink or do drugs or anything, so I tended to just hang out with a small amount of people who also didn't partake of these activities. When you live in a pretty small rural town in farmland areas in New Jersey, there really isn't that much, to do if you don't get messed up. So this leads to a lot of aimless driving about and just kind of, random exploring with your friends, I guess. Anyway, one night we read about this very old abandoned mansion. It's called Blairsden or something like that, which was about an hour from us. Supposedly heavily haunted by things like nuns and evil spirits. So it's the, common stuff that you hear about the seriously haunted houses. Anyway, we thought, well, what the hell, and we headed there just for fun. I had never really believed in, this kind of stuff before, and I was, mainly along one of those types of adventures because of just a simple lack of nothing better to do, and that, this was the only option to hang out with friends. So this night, there were four of us, and we arrived at the front of this really overgrown trail, and it was about 11 p.m., and it was in the dead of winter, so it was cold and frozen snow on the ground, total silence in the air. It was just eerie. My one friend opted to stay behind and drive the car because we read that the area was heavily patrolled. And so now there were three of us, actually. Now, for reasons that I don't know how to explain to this day, the moment I stepped out of that car, I was immediately filled with this overwhelming sense of complete, total dread. That's the only way I can describe it. You know, it was just this horrible sinking, kind of scared, kind of panicky kind of feeling. It wasn't the normal, oh, let's not get caught up type of feelings. It was the feeling that something very, very bad was going to happen. The feeling that something purely evil did not want us there. So the other guys didn't really pick up on it as much as I did, but could easily sense that I was really not into this. Anyway, they begged me to start moving, and when I did, it felt like every single step I took, there was a weight getting heavier on my shoulders, like there was something standing on me. Now, the path to this mansion is about a half mile long, through the woods with a sheer drop on one side leading to a pond and a nearly vertical hill on the other side leading into thick, heavy woods. So we're walking along, and literally every step I took, this weight on me was getting heavier and heavier. The sound of our feet crunching through snow is all I can hear, other than my own heartbeat. After what seemed like forever, we turned a bend, and there before us, in the darkness, is this huge, superimposing mansion looming out at us on top of the pretty big hill. And leading up to the mansion was this network of ornate staircases, probably a set of 10 stairs, and then a landing, then 10 more, and so on. It was just bizarre. At this point, I was about to collapse. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and I could hardly breathe by that point. So I made it up one set of stairs, then another, and then finally, about halfway up the third step, I just stopped. I can't go any further. I say to my one buddy behind me that that's it. That's as far as I'm going to go. If I go any further, I'm going to just lose my mind. I can't take this anymore. So my other friend, Josh, is about 3 steps ahead of me. Clearly seeing that I'm going through some sort of breakdown, he agrees with me and says to me while facing me, "Okay, let me just go to the top up there and see what's up there, and we will leave." I look behind us at the trail we came in on. As I turn my head to look back at Josh, I see something large flying overhead. It was Josh. Without exaggerating, Josh lands in the snow to the side of the steps about 25 feet away from where he was just standing literally seconds before. He comes to a stop, turns, looks at us, and says, "We got to get the hell out of here." At this point, we all just take off running. This weight on my shoulders was gone, and it was replaced by nothing but these surges of adrenaline. Remember when I mentioned that the night was one of those middle of the dead winter, completely silent nights? Well, not anymore. We entered the woods, and it sounded like the loudest, most humid summer night ever. I'm talking about things like birds, crickets, wind in the trees, everything. It was so loud that I could barely hear my feet crunching the snow as I tried in vain to catch up to Josh, who was about 50 feet in front of us. After what seemed like only a couple of seconds, we were down off the hill and we spilled out onto the main road. Our other friend, the one driving, had been making loops up and down the road, and he came round the corner. We waved him down and we just piled in, and we were panting and sweating and we were breathless. Josh hasn't said a word. He was just sitting there in the back seat of his own car. His eyes were wide. He was rubbing his hands together, and we were all screaming at him for information, what happened, etc. He didn't say anything for a long time, and finally, as we were nearing his house, he just uttered 3 words that I'll never forget as long as I live. I was pushed. We get back to his house, and the 4 of us crammed ourselves into Josh's room, where he proceeds to take his shirt off and show us 2 large red marks on his chest. He then proceeded to tell us that all he can remember is looking down the stairs at me, saying to me that he wanted to check out the top of the landing, and when he turned back around, he was completely just blindsided by this huge black figure who shoved him backward and sent him flying down the hill into the snow. He said he knew in an instant then that he had come into contact with something that was pure evil, and that that was the only warning he was going to get. So the 4 of us all interpreted that night differently. I myself have vowed to never, ever go there again. And I honestly don't even like to tell this story because it kind of tends to bring back all those memories and put me in that headspace of fear and dread again. And I really don't like that. Keep in mind, I went into this story knowing full well that most people wouldn't believe me. But rest assured that what I have told you is exactly what happened that night to the best of my recollection. A growl. I used to believe that paranormal wasn't real until I myself had an experience. I went to my grandparents' house in California that time after we had just turned 20. It was a sunny, warm day and everything was just normal. We had gone to a dog park to wander around and we came back for an afternoon nap. The house is 2 stories and one on the first level and a basement that doubles as an entire second floor. The basement is where we slept. Now, most people think, oh God, the basement. But this was a house we had been in since we were little to come visit, and the basement looked like a normal first floor of a house, just with no windows. There was always a light on in the room, even when we were sleeping, and it genuinely just was like a normal bottom floor, not a stereotypical basement. It had a bathroom and everything. It was pretty comfortable. In the room we all just hunkered down in, and there were three beds, one for my parents on one side of the room with the closet door next to them, and two on the other side of the room for me and my sisters. Everyone just lay down, take a nap, but I didn't want to, so I started reading with the lamp on. It illuminated everything in the room, and it all felt super peaceful and calm to have everyone just snoring away around me. And then it happened. There was a weird growling noise that started in the closet near my parents' bed from across the room. It was kind of guttural and deep with a sort of gravelly sort of sense to it. So I'm not sure if it was a growl, but it was the best way to describe it. Now, the closet was always closed, out of habit really, but the door was now creaked open just a little bit. I was a bit nervous at this point, but the house is old and I'm not generally afraid. Maybe it was the hot water heater, wherever that thing is, and someone just accidentally put their shirt in the closet and forgot to close it. The growl kind of turned into this weird note, not like singing, but a piano key sort of tone. Closest sound is like a D flat. But it was continuous. Now, I was scared and looking at the closet, and then something shifted out of the door. It was midday on a Saturday, and I was wide awake. I hadn't fallen asleep. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It's not me accidentally seeing something. I hope it was my brain having a one-time hallucination, but it would be the only one I would ever have. This was real. And it's super, super scary because it didn't give any warning and was in a place I found to be safe and secure. A place I had felt comfortable in since I was a little girl of not even 5 years old. This thing, it looked as black as night. Blacker than that, if you can even imagine anything like that. It was the kind of black that you can't even describe because it's not even a color anymore. It's just an absence of everything, of life. It's a color I wonder if maybe blind people see because it's literally the color of nothing. Its form kind of looked like a person sitting in a lotus flower position, only its back was broken. So the head was hanging to the right side, and the top of its head was touching its knee. It looked kind of cartoonish almost, because it was literally bent in half. The bottom half was a lotus flower position, and the top half was just the rest of that form, bent to be almost upside down, but still attached to the body. It made no sense. Looking at it almost hurt my brain. It was like looking at a real-life glitch in reality or something. I can't even begin to describe this properly. It had no eyes, nor any other recognizable feature, just its form, and that color that wasn't even a color. It just freaked me out. Then it creeped out of the closet, kind of halfway, but it moved, and yet didn't. It was almost like your eyes are playing tricks on you. I wanted to rub my eyes to see if I was just completely nuts. But human instinct just told me not to take my eyes off this thing for some reason. You know when you're scared of the closet door, so you stare at it hard enough that you think it's opening and you have to do a double take? Well, that is how it looked when it moved. Like it was, but wasn't at the same time. It was only there for a split moment with that goddamn tone ringing in my ears before it moved back and shut the door. It happened so fast. I only really registered the click of the closet door shutting rather than its movements, which still, to this day, really creeps me out. It was like it was never there, or never supposed to be there, and somehow I saw it and yet didn't. The entire encounter, which couldn't have lasted, longer than 3 to 4 seconds tops, had me frozen in fear. I cannot describe the level of terror of seeing this thing. I have been through a lot in my life, but nothing was as horrifying as that. I finally found my sense of balance, and my legs started to work, and I ran straight upstairs and became an absolute mess. I refused to sleep downstairs and would sleep upstairs with all the lights on, though that didn't help me feel better because I saw it with the lights on. It's been around 4 years now, and I still have to sleep with a night light on, and I barricade all the closet doors with what I have handy to ensure they do not open. I sleep with the door to my bedroom closed, and my phone resting close to me. It takes me a long time to go to sleep, and I can't sleep alone anymore. It really has messed me up. I saw something my brain half couldn't comprehend. It was like staring at something that was so outside my field of understanding and comprehension that my brain just went, "Ah?" and filled in the blanks. It was such a strange thing. But what I saw was my brain's interpretation of it, not what I actually saw. I can't accurately describe what I saw because it's like trying to describe a color you've never seen. I really don't know what it was and hope to everything in my being that I never ever see this thing again. But I think, looking back now, that it was just some kind of evil spirit. And I don't know why it was there, but it was. Something at the foot of my bed. So anyway, this story happened in our basement, or this experience, I should say. Our basement had a lot of paranormal activity. There were just, normally it was minor things like things being moved, doors closing, lights on and off, just a general bad feeling. Hearing someone walk up and down the stairs all night, that was generally some of the worst stuff that happened. So the really worst kind of activity that would happen down there was occasionally seeing the shape of a really tall man who would kind of pop up every now and then. And this was confirmed by neighbors. A very tall man lived there and died while remodeling the basement. We think he wasn't happy when my mom bought the place and redid the whole basement. My sister has the basement room, and she was out of town at this time, so I'm 6'2", and I'm usually sleeping in my tiny room on a twin bed. So I took the chance of sleeping in the basement in my sister's queen bed. I made triple sure to close the door because the whole lights on and off thing, it wasn't an electrical problem, as we had 2 separate electricians take a look at the whole basement. So I fell asleep, and I really enjoyed being able to just kind of spread out on the bed. And then I woke up at some point in the middle of the night, and I looked up. The door was wide open, and I saw someone at the foot of the bed, bent forward like they were trying to take a closer look at me. In my sleepy kind of state, and my head tried to fill in this kind of non-existent gap, and I thought it was my friend. So I told my friend to just leave me the hell alone. And then, it clicked that it was maybe only my mom. And, so I shut up. This time, it was just standing in the doorway looking at me. I rubbed my eyes, looked, and it was still there. And I repeated the process, and it was still there. So this continued for a few minutes, and I started to think it's just a weird shadow. Until As I'm staring at this thing, it walks out of the room. At this point, I just had a shock. And I grabbed my phone to text my sister to see if she came home early and was messing with me. Then the lights turned on in the other room. I called my sister, who answered me very sleepily, and she told me that she was still out of town. Lights turn off. Then the door to our storage room closes. I ran out. I turned the lights on, went into the storage room, and no one was there. I marched upstairs and I slept on the couch. I asked my mom if it was her, and it wasn't. If you think my mom was messing with me, she was in a car accident when I was younger, and her foot was all but destroyed. Not only does she avoid walking downstairs, but when she does, it sounds very clear. A big thud, little step, big thud, very slow as well. She then told me something like, "Well, I didn't know you were going to sleep down there. He was messing with me yesterday while I was doing laundry." So anyway, this was one of the more terrifying things that happened there, and I was really scared actually. And but things like, lights going on and off and all that kind of stuff just seems to happen very frequently.